мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions.
Russia is shutting down gas supplies.
What if we told you that Qatar is actually profiting heavily from the Russian-Ukraine war? And this is not the EU and its member states trying to punish Russia for invading Ukraine. Instead, this is Russia itself.
Что нас хотят победить на поле боя. Ну, что здесь скажешь? Пусть попробуют.
Trying to use natural gas as its weapon against the international sanctions of its economy and the military support from the EU to the Kiev government.
Volodymyrovich Putin.
And you're probably asking, how do they want to do that right? Well, it's simple. One of the largest gas channels that operate out of Germany, Nord Stream 1, has been closed indefinitely after suspected attacks from Russian-caused massive leaks of methane in the Baltic Sea. This is coupled with the fact that the European gas sector as a whole is causing a lot of issues for its government. To put into context how bad things in Europe are, many experts suggest that the hike in gas prices will continue until 2025. But the craziest part about that projection is that this shortage of gas supply could potentially drag Europe and Asia into a war of who can get more gas than the other. Now, this is where Qatar comes in. The price of gas imported from non-Russia producing countries has increased drastically due to the high demand from Europe. Examples of these countries are Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United States, and the country that we're concerned about today, Qatar. Qatar is a huge producer of gas, and it seems like they've hit the jackpot in this one. Despite the fact that Qatar is a very small country, they are the third largest exporter of liquefied natural gas in the world. This liquefied gas is what the whole of Europe now has to depend on, since it can easily be transported through large LNG tanks. But if you followed this narrative closely, you should be asking yourself, can Qatar really supply enough gas that would offset the scarcity that Russia has caused in Europe? Well, to answer that question, you need to understand that Qatar was responsible for 20% of the gas supplied around the world when Russia's supply chain was still active. And these gas exports from Qatar come from a specific port called Ras Laffan. Ras Laffan is responsible for 80% of the exported liquefied gas that Qatar distills every year. From Ras Laffan, huge methane tankers leave with liquefied gas to other ports in Asia. So right now, Ras Laffan is literally one of the few ports that are keeping the gas supply in Asia afloat. And if by any chance something goes wrong in Ras Laffan, we might witness the biggest, and we mean biggest, energy crisis in history. But what's the connection between the Qatar's supply of gas and the Russian-Ukraine war? To answer that question, we need to take a trip back to the 1970s when Qatar's involvement in gas production took place. It began when the British oil company Shell made a history-changing discovery in the waters of the Persian Gulf close to Qatar and Iran. The water is divided into the northern and southern regions, and most of Shell's discovery was in the northern part, which belongs to Qatar. These northern fields, as they're usually called, are dimensioned at about 2,300 square miles, which is estimated to represent at least 15% of all natural gas reserves worldwide. But as cool as that sounds, when Shell made this discovery in 1970, no one really cared because back then gas had no value, at least not as much as it does in our world today. The Qatari government, on the other hand, wasn't willing to pump in billions of dollars to build large infrastructures for a secondary commodity. It wasn't a feasible idea considering the price of gas back then, especially when you factor in the billions that would be required to build hundreds of gas transmission pipelines from Qatar to Europe. But a decade later, the Qatari government then realized that their crude oil reserves were too small and inadequate to build their country to the heights they had envisaged. This made them turn their attention back to gas because they knew it could become a major player in the energy industry. Considering the price of gas was gradually rising, they figured out that all they needed to do was maximize their profit and minimize their expenses. So, to achieve this goal, they decided to focus on transportation, making it easier to move gas to other parts of the world and still be profitable. This might sound a bit technical, but the Qatari government started investing in liquefactional technology and regasification techniques of natural gas. How it works is, the gaseous molecules first need to be cooled to a degree of negative 161 degrees Celsius, but this isn't economically safe to do. So the Qatari government invested heavily in pipelines, liquefaction plants, methane tankers, storage facilities, and regasification plants, all in a bid to tackle the economic hazards that the process might cause. And the truth is, when the Qatari government decided to turn their attention to gas, they probably didn't expect to spend as much money as they eventually did. But when they saw the huge prospects of building such a compound technology, they soon realized they were heading for something far bigger than they ever imagined. Qatar sent its first shipment of liquefied gas to Japan in December 1996, and after that successful shipment, Qatar had set itself on a part to change the trajectory of the gas industry forever. Their shipments to Korea, Taiwan, and China solidified the country as one of the most significant exporters of natural gas in the world. Qatar only supplied to Asian countries because European countries weren't interested in their method of liquefaction and regasification. They rejected Qatar's offer to sell to them because, well, they still had Russia on their good side. But now that Russia is using its gas supply to blackmail the world, even Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, stated that Qatar could save the world at this point by supplying to Europe. So now that Qatar has been given the opportunity to export gas to Europe, how much would they be making from this deal? How much gas do they have? How much of their gas can be exported to meet the demand of two continents simultaneously? And what are the implications of this new deal for Qatar? Well, let's find out. The first thing you need to know is that this new deal for Qatar is bigger than you can imagine, because Qatar is a huge pool of gas. It was reported in the fourth quarter of 2020 that gas reserves in Qatar had reached a staggering 25 trillion cubic meters. And just to put into context how large that is, it is equal to about 13% of all the gas reserves discovered worldwide. But at the same time, Russia is 1,500 times bigger than Qatar in terms of land mass and is over 50 times more populated. So can Qatar really run them over as the biggest exporters of gas? Well, the answer is not entirely yes, but it's definitely heading in that direction. Qatar doesn't just have huge reserves of gas, it has the lowest LNG extraction and export cost in the world. Remember, they wanted to maximize their profit and minimize their expenses. The expense of exporting liquefied gas is said to remain above $25 per cubic meter for the next couple of years, but the cost of extraction and export from Qatar barely costs above $4. This means the cost to purchase gas from Qatar is literally unmatched by any other exporter in the world. Qatar also exports 110 billion cubic meters of gas annually, and if you do the math, they literally earn at least $100 billion from their exportation of gas alone. That's definitely a lot of money, given how small they are when compared to other countries. And we know Qatar is filled with some of the finest luxuries in the world, but where else does all that money go? Well, the bulk of that money goes into their sovereign wealth fund. These funds are used by the government to invest in companies, real estate, and different projects around the world. And even after all these investments, the sovereign fund of Qatar still has over $450 billion just lying around. This means that Qatar is very well close to what many countries can only dream of, and that's financial freedom for everyone, the government and the citizens. To give an example of how this is possible, the Qatari government has an annual budget of $55 billion. On the other hand, the investments made with the Norwegian Wealth Fund generate just $850 million per year. We hope your math is solid, because if you calculate the percentage of that figure in comparison to the $55 billion of Qatar, you'd see that they make just 6.4% of what Qatar spends in a year. This means that Qatar could finance any project within the country just from the returns of their gas exports, without raising a single dollar from any other income stream. Now again, we need your math skills here, because if you can put that figure down and project how much they'd be making in the next couple of years, you'd see that Qatar is on the verge of changing its economy forever. But we haven't even reached the key point yet. There's a company called Qatar Energy, an energy company that the Qatari government is investing over $30 billion in to increase its energy exports by 16% before the fourth quarter of 2027. They are also investing another $17 billion to expand their liquefaction technology in methane tankers to reach anywhere around the world. They have the market, they have the product, and now Qatar is literally signing long-term deals with European countries to become their #1 exporter of gas. So thanks to Russia, Qatar has found a wider market to supply its liquefied natural gas to. Seeing the big moves they're making, Qatar has become a major player in politics in different global affairs. In fact, the United States President Joe Biden, has issued a directive to make Qatar a major non-NATO ally. So at this point, it seems pretty clear that Qatar can surpass Russia as the largest exporter of natural gas in the world. So how will Qatar use this money? How will they use their new influence in the global market to impact the world? And most importantly, what other countries would benefit from the Russia-Ukraine war? Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.